to meet his beautiful daughter Kavea, and nor will Kavea have an opportunity to meet with her father.
There's been a massive increase in fraud offences this year, up over 70% according to official figures. Bank scams and unauthorised card transactions were the main reason for the jump. 9:02.
News Talk weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. Last minute shopper? Don't stress. Give them the gift of travel with a Ryanair gift card.
Rain will become widespread tomorrow morning, turning heavy at times in the south and southwest, feeling slightly milder with highest temperatures of 7 to 12 degrees. Now you're up to date on News Talk.
All you need for Christmas.
News Talk's Christmas cash machine.
Oh, get in there!
Oh, thank you. Oh my God, I can't believe it.
Your chance to win big.
Now, congratulations to Louise O'Donnell, who won over €15,000. Thank you very much in the Christmas cash machine today. Tomorrow you could win €15,732.61. So to be with a chance of playing, just text the word play to 57599. Get your entry in by 3 o'clock tomorrow. Barry Dunn could be calling you back. You have to answer your phone within 5 rings. Tell Barry the exact amount in euro and cents, and the money is yours. So remember the amount again, €15,732.61. Text play to 57599. Over 18s only. Texts cost €2.50, and terms and conditions are on newstalk.com.
The Football Show on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch every live Premier League game this Christmas on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then. What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
Now you're welcome along. Joe Malloy with you on this evening's football show. 53106, the text number, or you can get us at Off the Ball as well. Stuey Byrne is going to join us later on to chat all things League of Ireland. But first, very happy to say, Simon Kuper is with us on the line. Evening, Simon. Great to have you on.
Good evening. Hi.
I was looking, your book, by the way, has several different names. I've gone for Barca, the rise and fall of the club that built modern football. There are various interpretations out there.
That's the new UK version, and the US version is the Barcelona complex, if buying for friends and family over there.
Well, it's been very well received. I know a couple of the guys here in the office are reading it or have read it, and it was getting 2 thumbs up all around. So you've generally been getting good feedback, I presume?
Not for me to show off, but yes, the response. And Messi was the man who did most for the book by leaving on the day it was published, which created a wave of publicity. So I want to give a big shout out to him here.
Well, I'm sure he'll be thrilled. So
he listens to Off the Ball, you know.
So I guess the point here is to talk Xavi, because this is an interesting development, to say the least, and may warrant another chapter or two down the line. First, though, I mean, we're at that time of the year. We've been putting it to various guests across the show as we reach the end of 2021. Have you enjoyed the footballing produce that was the year gone by, between the Euros and maybe the domestic game? I'm not sure which league in particular you watch, in the Champions League. Have you found 2021 good fare?
It's been great, because the best club team of the autumn has been Ajax, which, you know, I thought would never happen again. But they won 6 out of 6 in the Champions League. When they almost reached the final in 2019, last-minute winner by Spurs ended the dream. I thought, right, that's not going to happen again in my lifetime, and it might not, but here we are again. So, you know, Ajax, I think, have really restored my faith in football this year, playing beautiful attacking football, scoring loads of goals.
And do you still have a natural affinity to Ajax because of Cruyff and because of growing up in the Netherlands?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of support all Dutch teams, especially the national team. I'm also happy if PSV or Feyenoord win in Europe. But right now, I think Ajax, much better than Holland right now, are the most thrilling Dutch team, and better than Barcelona. Barcelona and Ajax are kind of sister clubs, and I can't remember Ajax being better since the 90s.
How have they done it, do you know?
They kept modernising football. I mean, you know, Cruyffian football, we play on the other team's half, we press, we play at an amazing pace, we don't give you a second of rest on the ball, we pass forward diagonally all the time. But you have to keep updating it. That's what Guardiola understands. Ajax understand that. Barcelona kind of are trying to reach back into the past, which I think is a lost hope.
Okay. Well, let's talk Xavi then, because I guess, you know, Cruyff's vision spectacularly realised once again by Pep, and he had Xavi in his midfield, who seemed to be an absolute devotee of Cruyff as a player, and now it's still very much the case as a manager, is back at the club as it's in turmoil. So, I mean, if you were looking for, like I said, another chapter or two, then this is a pretty interesting period. From memory, one of the great maxims in soccernomics is that managers are vastly overvalued. I'm sure there are some exceptions, though.
There are a few exceptions. In soccernomics, we reckon that about 10% of managers add value to their teams. You know, a lot of the usual suspects like Guardiola, Mourinho, Ferguson. And then there's some lesser known names in lower divisions like Paul Sturrock, who is a remarkably successful manager. But most managers don't make any difference. Very, very largely, the secret of football is the wage bill. The team with the highest wage bill wins, team with the lowest wage bill loses. Not always, but usually. And over 10 years, pretty much always. So, you know, I was in Barcelona last month and I was amazed and really stunned by the euphoria that greeted the appointments of Xavi, as if you bring back a man from, you know, the great years and the great years will come back with him. It obviously doesn't work that way. Also, there's no correlation we show in soccernomics between having been a great player and being a great coach. Some great players become great coaches, like Cruyff. Others don't, like Bobby Moore. There's just no correlation at all.
Perhaps one of the reasons for hope around Xavi is that he played the game seemingly with such intellect, and he did think about it so deeply, and he talked about the Cruyffian ideas which he, you know, espoused at every opportunity. So there is a hope here that there is some intangible link from Cruyff to Pep and now to Xavi, almost as if they've passed the manual to each other. I presume that's the reason for the excitement primarily.
I think it's more primitive than that. I mean, if you're talking about great playmakers who really understood the game, what about Andrea Pirlo? You know, a very similar player to Xavi, not a great success at Juventus last year. I just don't see the correlation. I mean, there's no proof of any correlation. I think that the risk at Barcelona is that it becomes a kind of ABBA tribute band style club. That, you know, let's get the band together and it will be just like the old days. And so you have Xavi, they re-elected as president Joan Laporta, who had been president in the great years. They've even brought back Dani Alves, age 38, right back of the great team, as if you bring back the personnel, then somehow you restore that era. There's this kind of magical desire to return to 2010, whereas what they should be doing is sort of what Ajax is doing and saying, where is football now? Who are playing the most advanced football? Let's steal their ideas. Let's copy from them.
Further to your point, by the way, Barcelona playing this evening against Sevilla. They are 1-0 down. Arsenal 4-1 up against Sunderland. Your impressions of Xavi, the player and the person, would be interesting. I'm sure he cropped up numerous times when you were doing your research for the book. What did people have to say about Xavi, or what struck you about him?
I mean, he really was a footballer who thought about football more than most. And he identified with the Barcelona project of ignoring size and speed of players and just making football about the pass. The geometry of the pass is what he studied from, you know, early adolescence at the Masia, the famous academy. You could kind of spend your whole football career thinking about the pass, the diagonal passes. If I pass to you, the third man should already be moving. What space should he be moving into? How hard should I pass to you if you're going to pass on to someone who's 5 yards away from you, 10 yards away from you? It's like a university course in the pass. And he totally immersed in that. He identified with Guardiola, he identified with Cruyff. He has a very strong sense of the kind of genealogy of Barca. I don't think it's going to help him, but the socios like it, the fans, the members, at least they like it now. Of course, in 2 months' time, if they still aren't winning, I think they'll like it rather less.
The early signs, by the way, just for context for people tuning in, they were 9th in the league when he took over, 9 points off Real Madrid. They're currently 8th and now 16 points behind Real Madrid. Game in hand this evening, which, as I mentioned, they're losing. I was reading that Xavi's arrival at the club has resulted in a few changes. The technical secretary, Ramon Plains, left almost immediately. He'd been kept on by Laporta despite being associated with the dreadful transfer policy of old. So is there a sense that Xavi may have a degree more control than previous managers?
I think he's going to be the most powerful manager at the club. That's not necessarily going to help performance, but the most powerful manager at the club since Guardiola a decade before. When Guardiola left, they began to appoint, quite deliberately and initially successfully, sort of mostly B-listers, coaches who would not try to dominate, not impose their views on the dressing room, because they had an increasingly experienced and brilliant team. You know, at their peak, figures like Messi, Busquets, Xavi himself, Iniesta. You didn't want a big mouth coach, a Mourinho figure, coming in and telling them what to do. You wanted the players to run the show, which they did very successfully until about 2015. And so after a succession of B-listers, a decade of coaches who saw themselves more as kind of Messi's assistant, you now have a coach who is the boss.
And who has a clear philosophy, and one he's not going to budge from, which may be a hindrance or a help, who's to say. Is your sense that Xavi is rigidly sticking to Cruyffian ideas or what he was doing under Pep over a decade ago, or do you think he's the type who will evolve? Is it too early to say?
I mean, I think he'll fall into, or he's falling sometimes into the same temptation as Koeman, which is that we're not going to play on the halfway line as much. Sometimes we'll go back. And, you know, the Barcelona idea is we have the ball. We pass it around. We make you chase it. That only works if you're better than the other team on the ball. If you play against Bayern Munich, which they, you know, did a couple of weeks ago, and Munich lost by the usual 3-0, you don't have the ball. They have the ball. They're better than you. You have to chase. And so then the kind of Cruyffian ideas go out the window, because Cruyffian football is about dominance, and dominance requires excellence. So I just think it's unrealistic. Every time they've played a big team in Europe in the last year and a bit, they've lost by 3+. They've lost 3 times in the last year and a bit by 3+ goals to Bayern alone, plus Juventus, Paris Saint-Germain, Benfica once. It's, you know, it's no longer misfortune, it's carelessness.
He said an interesting thing on his return. We've lost Barcelona's model of play and we have to bring it back. I haven't been here for 6 years. There are things that have surprised me tactically. I wasn't here, so I don't know who's responsible for it, but it's making the job hard for us. The large majority of players do not understand positional play. There are mechanisms that I understood from the age of 11, and we have players here that haven't worked on them. It struck me obviously as pretty damning, firstly. It struck me though, secondly, as a coach who has a real confidence in what he's doing, which is no bad thing. But thirdly, it did make me wonder, a lot of these players he's talking about have been there since they were 11. He's talking about doing these things since he was 11, and he's got a bunch of them now who don't seem to understand these mechanisms. So what's been happening at La Masia jumped to mind immediately.
I mean, he was the best pupil. And the problem when you no longer have star players being brought in, and you no longer have that one-off incredible generation of Xavi, Messi, and Iniesta, is places open up on the team, and then you put in boys from the Masia who might not be up to it, just because, you know, there is a place. So someone like Oscar Minguella, I don't think is a Barca player. And if you no longer have money to buy the best players, you buy third-rate players like Dest, the right back from Ajax. And, you know, these guys might have had the same training as Xavi, but they didn't absorb the same lessons as Xavi because they're not as good. I think what he's talking about is a simple lack of quality. You know, there are not Xavi and Iniestas and Messis in every generation. And this fantasy that if you go back to the Masia and put boys from the academy in the first team, it will be like then. It won't. That was a one-off.
Did you get a sense when you were doing research for the book and speaking to different people that the quality of coaching had slipped at La Masia? Or is it more, as you said, it was just a freakish generation which, you know, lifted all boats?
I think what happened was that they were ahead of their time in the late 90s and early 2000s when these guys come out of the Masia. They were the most innovative academy in football. They had understood the pass and how to teach the pass better than anyone else. But the thing about football is it evolves, it progresses every year, almost every month. And every other club and every big federation in football went to study Barcelona. So there was this endless stream of foreign coaches visiting Barca. So the coach of Germany, what's he called? The one who was coaching Bayern last year, he spent time around Barca. Everyone spent time around Barca. And so you see that other academies copied what they did, innovated, updated, and became better. So where would you get a better education now? At the Bayern Academy or at the Masia at Barcelona? I would wager at Bayern. And even the English, who never used to produce skillful passing footballers, now producing droves of them, the Phil Foden types, because English academies also have shifted to the Barcelona mode. So I think what happened is it's not so much that the Masia regressed, as everybody else caught up. Everybody studied Barcelona. Barcelona got lazy because they were number one. They didn't really look at what anyone else was up to. And so they got caught up with that. Happens when you're number one.
They should still produce some talent, I suppose.
They do. They do. I mean, Xavi and Nico are wonderful players. And Ansu Fati, I'm surprised they're producing so much still.
What about Xavi, the person? Because, again, and look, this kind of happens with every manager. There's not a manager in the world now who takes over and doesn't ban ketchup. But invariably, the articles followed that Xavi was a disciplinarian and he wants to go back to team meals together and curfews, and diet has to be perfect, and general behaviour. The kind of behaviour Zlatan would have described, I think, as schoolboys behaving far too well, is what Xavi's trying to re-implement. What about him as a person? Were you surprised to hear the disciplinarian angle?
I think it's not so much him, it's just where Barcelona was. What had happened over the last decade is, look, you had the best generation in the history of football, and many of them are still there, and several of them were still there a couple of years ago. If you think of Messi, Busquets, Piqué as leading that generation. And these guys had won everything in football. You don't tell them what to do. You don't tell them what time to show up for training. They were winning everything until about 2019. And so what happened is the players ran the club. The players had the biggest say in tactics. The players said, when we go to away games in Spain, we want to travel on the day, not stay in a hotel in the host city the night before. So the players made the decisions. And I think that's a natural course when you're talking about the most successful generation of players in history. And now that generation has run its course, there's a couple left over, Piqué and Busquets, but they can't really perform at the old level anymore. I think it's natural that the balance of power swings back towards the coach. It's not going to help particularly. It's not going to make a difference banning ketchup and so on. Yeah. But I think it's a natural process at this time.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating because he was such I was going to say confident, but it was more he was so arrogant, frankly, about the Barcelona model. In every interview he did as a player, he talked about other clubs with just complete disdain. Effectively referred to Real Madrid like as a long ball team, and they're about sweat and tears, which maybe compared to Barcelona there was a touch of that, but I don't think compared to most of Europe Real Madrid could be put in that category. This could be a rather chastening experience for him when he realises that espousing the 5 or 6 Cruyffian tips or kernels doesn't quite transform a team overnight.
The thing about Cruyffianism is that everybody became Cruyffian. So Bayern are Cruyffian, Manchester City are Cruyffian, Italy are Cruyffian. England is trying to be more Cruyffian than before, English Academy certainly. So the comparative advantage is gone. When you're the only club doing something new and brilliant, you are going to win. You're going to have the best academy, and you're going to have the best tactics. When everyone is doing it, where is your comparative advantage?
Yes. And so I guess to get to the nub of the point, you are highly sceptical, and I can understand why. You're highly sceptical that Xavi, I suppose, in the mould of a Pep, has some deeper appreciation and understanding of Cruyffism than the rest who are imitating it, and imitating it very well.
Yeah, imitating it and improving it and updating it for a modern era. I mean, I would say that if I were running a giant club like Barcelona and I wanted a new coach, I would say, who is the best, most innovative, proven, successful coach that I can find playing this kind of attacking Cruyffian-style football that we want? The best in the world is what I want. And would I then arrive at a guy whose entire coaching experience has been in Qatar? I doubt it. I mean, maybe Xavi will prove to be a good coach, but we don't have any evidence yet that he is. Whereas if you went for somebody like, say, Guardiola or the Ajax coach Erik ten Hag, you could say, well, these guys have proven that they are wonderful, innovative coaches. Julian Nagelsmann at Bayern, ditto. Why go for him? I mean, it's just sentiment, just nostalgia.
There is that. The one, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer jumps to mind here, I suppose. One difference is that when Alex Ferguson rocked up at Old Trafford, he had a real body of work behind him. Whereas when Pep Guardiola pitched up at Barcelona with a Cruyffism manual in his back pocket and an understanding of Barcelona DNA, it worked absolutely wonderfully, from the off. So I guess that's the reason.
It did. I mean, look, it's funnily enough, it's quite a small club in that people hang around there for decades. They get to know each other very well. Often they know each other from teenage years until middle age or old age. And the thing about Guardiola is that a lot of senior people at the club, they just knew him very well.
Okay.
Cruyff knew him, Laporta, the then president and current president. And a lot of people at the top of the organisation thought, we've known this kid since he was 14. He's now 38. We've seen enough of him coaching the B team in situ to know that he can do this. With Xavi, I feel it's more, well, there was Guardiola, so there was the untried, unproven Guardiola, so we're going to try and find the Guardiola of 2008.
Yeah.
Well, that looks like Xavi. Again, it's all kind of back to the past. That seems to be the whole manual that they're using.
Yeah. Okay. It's going to be bloody interesting if it works. Financially, just to what extent are his hands tied behind his back then? It's his woeful prognosis the next couple of years really is the last time we spoke, I presume.
Yeah, I mean, their debt is over 1.5 billion euros. They're likely not going to qualify for the Champions League there. So the likelihood is that they won't play Champions League for a year and a half, which will be a huge dent in finances. Sponsors are losing interest. And so when Laporta says, we can sign Haaland, it reminds me of this summer when Messi was going to stay and they were also going to sign Mbappe. It seems to me just fantasy talk. I mean, with whose money and according to what financial rules are they going to sign Haaland? Who are they going to bring in January? I mean, I think there will be some extra borrowing that's going to be feasible, and they will sell a couple of players, like they might well sell Frenkie de Jong, which will raise a bit of cash. But then you lose Frenkie de Jong. I just don't see their ability to bring in talent as being anywhere near the level of, say, Real Madrid's or Manchester United's.
Yeah, Frenkie de Jong's earning 355 grand a week, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, they pay the highest salaries. They were paying until 2020, the highest salaries in football. So they need to get rid of some of those guys. The thing is, Bayern, Paris Saint-Germain apparently would be quite happy to get Frenkie de Jong. So, I mean, do you really want to lose him? He's become an emblem of the bad years, but that's because he arrived at the time of decline.
To what extent do you think Xavi will be afforded a lot of patience here if there are, a missed Champions League season and it looks like they're going to finish outside the Champions League spaces and some more hammerings along the way and discontent? Surely there's a realisation that throwing in another manager and not giving new manager a lot more, huge funds is going to make any great difference. Will his relationship with the club, his standing at the club, see him out through 2-3 pretty bad years, or how trigger happy is the current Barcelona hierarchy, do we think?
I think he'll be given a lot of patience. I mean, I think fans are beginning to realise, unlike a month ago, that he's not a magician.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he has various advantages. One is that in the last year and a half, more or less, just under 2 years, they've sacked Valverde, Setien and then Koeman. So are all these guys complete losers, or is there something structurally wrong? Maybe there's something structurally wrong. Another advantage is he's Xavi, which buys you patience. And the third is that there are youth players coming through, and that kind of feeds the illusion, as they call it, the kind of the dream, the belief. And so just having youth players playing nicely, as they did last weekend, will give fans patience. The fans want to believe in a future, and when you see Xavi and Nico play beautifully as teenagers, you can sort of believe in a future, and so you can console yourself about the defeats of today. So I think he, more than anyone else, will be given a bit of time.
Well, we'll watch with interest. On Pep, by the way, who's Man City are currently finding their straps, I think, and looking ominously good for everybody else. Was there any interesting insight over the course of the book into what made Pep so great, so, an obvious person even as a player, and into his late 30s, the guy to take over the club without much of a CV? What was it about Pep, did people say, that made him so great?
I think a couple of things. I mean, he understood Cruyffianism, but he was Cruyff was the original, but Guardiola was a more rigorous coach. So he brought in all these rules, like we had to exchange 15 passes before we start attacking the other team's goal. or when we lose the ball, we press for precisely 5 seconds, or when an opposition forward comes up with the ball near our penalty area, we're going to do a 3+1 defence. So one guy goes up to him and 3 are in a semicircle behind him. So he had all these kind of rules. It was almost like playing American football. They had preset plays that Guardiola got them to copy, got them to apply, and these brilliantly intelligent players are able to do that. Or when we attack on the left, we finish on the right. When we attack on the right, we finish on the left. There was a kind of hyper-organisation to the brilliance that he brought in. Or he brought in a rigour. And the other thing is that he was a video analyst as much as a coach. So he would spend 2 days before his match watching the opposition, trying to find their fatal flaw. So famously against Real Madrid in 2009, the fatal flaw where there was a big gap between the central defenders and the central midfielders, and Messi was going to come and fill that gap, come into that gap where he would be able to dominate the game. So the kind of video analysis also he was brilliant at.
Right. Was Cruyff not so rigorous a coach?
No, Cruyff wasn't rigorous at all. He didn't even think of what they were going to do in training until he was walking to the training ground. Cruyff never had the patience to watch opponents. He was very much just a couple of principles, like we play in their half, we do diagonal passing, sort it out, guys.
Yeah, okay.
There was much less organisation, but he kind of had the vision. He saw the future of modern football, even in the 1960s as a teenager.
It's quite impressive that Pep has managed to keep it going. I thought when he took that sabbatical and went to New York and chilled out for a while that this would be a routine thing, and in fact that they might even increase with frequency as the years went by, whereas in fairness to him, he's managed to keep up that rigour and looks like he has many, many more years in the game.
Yeah, I think the difference between Guardiola and the club Barca is that Guardiola knows that in football you have to keep reinventing yourself. Football keeps advancing, so you have to keep renewing yourself and advancing. So, for example, he takes that sabbatical that you mentioned and he spends it really thinking about how do I talk to players and where is football going. So he comes to Bayern Munich afterwards and he says, okay, guys, our fullbacks, we're not using them enough. So when we attack, I want the fullbacks to go into central midfield and then we just swarm and dominate midfield. And that was an innovation that he hadn't had at Barca. Right. So Guardiola today is a completely different coach from the Guardiola of 2008, whereas Barcelona is trying to go back to the Barca of 2008, which is hopeless. Yeah,
and that is your ultimate worry with Xavi, that there's no evidence that he has evolved the way Guardiola has over the last 13 years.
Look, I'm sure Xavi's a very smart bloke and he wants to evolve, but he doesn't have the players that Guardiola had in 2008, the best team in the world with Messi. I mean, this team is so good that most of them win the World Cup in 2010 without Messi. So Xavi doesn't have that. And with Guardiola, you're really kind of talking about the best of the best in coaching. Whatever you say about him, City have been the dominant team over most of his period in England. And, why do we believe that Xavi is at the level of the guy who has been probably the best coach in football in the last 13 years? Yeah.
Sheer romanticism, I think.
Yes.
What this was, it's where we started. It is, there are Ole Gunnar Solskjaer shadows here, I think. Listen, that was fascinating. We'll see maybe how the rest of the season goes and get the end of term report maybe in the summertime. Simon Kuper, thanks so much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers. Simon Kuper there again. Simon's book we mentioned is very much out now, and it is Barcelona, the inside story, or the rise and fall of the club that built modern football. The latest, by the way, in that Barcelona match in La Liga is that they are 1-1 now away to Sevilla. They've just equalised. Arsenal 4-1 up at home to Sunderland. And as ever, our football coverage is with thanks to Sky. You can watch every live Premier League game this Christmas on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Catch the biggest live Premier League games every weekend on Sky Sports.
News Talk Breakfast.
Is it possible we won't need more restrictions? Because I think most people are kind of assuming there will be more.
I'm watching what we did during Delta, and we asked people to work from home. We asked people to reduce the level of socialisation, and that did result in the stabilisation of the Delta figures. We were winning over Delta.
News Talk Breakfast with Ciara Kelly and Shane Coleman.
In association with AIR.
Weekday mornings at 7 on News Talk.
Galvin Tullamore this Christmas. Ireland's destination menswear store. Galvin Tullamore.
This Christmas, give them a skill for life with driving lessons from the Irish School of Motoring. Buy gift vouchers online at ism.ie or call 0818 888 111.
Patient, impatient, courageous, careful, serious. Sometimes less so. All new Renault Arcana SUV, sporty and spacious at the same time, is just like you, hybrid by nature. Come and discover the all-new Renault Arcana E-Tech Hybrid from €259 per month. Renault Arcana, hybrid by nature. Visit your local Renault dealer today. Offer is made under hire purchase agreement. Terms and conditions apply. See Renault.ie.
Guaranteed Irish business members are working hard to support jobs, communities, and that includes our students.
Started in Sligo, studyclix.ie is Ireland's largest study website and is used by almost 250,000 secondary students and over 30,000 teachers. StudyClix makes learning easier by splitting subjects into topics and giving students exam questions, quizzes, videos and notes to learn more effectively. For a free trial, go to studyclix.ie. GuaranteedIrish.ie. Altogether better.
The O'Brien's Christmas wine sale is now on. Save up to 42% on over 200 wines from independent family wineries and well-known brands. Like half-price Monterreal Rioja Gran Reserva, now €16.95. Or Piper Hyde 6 Champagne, now €39.95. Save €15. Pop in store or shop online at o'brienswine.ie. Available while stocks last. Please enjoy alcohol sensibly.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch Premier League, Women's Super League, EFL, Scottish Premiership and much more. Live on Sky Sports.
Now you're welcome back. John Malloy with you this evening. Stuey Byrne is on the line. Hey Stewie.
How are you?
Yeah, very well. Yourself?
I'm good. I'm okay, yeah. Yeah, hanging in there. Shortest day of the year and all that.
Yeah. Be a grand stretch in the evenings tomorrow. Hang in there.
Yeah, I'm expecting it to be bright till at least, 4:15.
Yeah. So Brian Kerr was on Sunday show with Johnny Ward. He was asked about Stephen O'Donnell's move to Dundalk. Have a listen.
Well, I think what happened was disgraceful. I think, Stephen played underage football for me, and I like to think I had a decent relationship with him, and I was very supportive of him since he went into Pats. The chairman owner, Gary Kelleher, gave him a chance out of the blue where he had no great background in coaching whatsoever, hadn't got the qualifications for the job, was very keen to start his managerial career at St. Pat's. They obviously had to do something to get over the hump of him not having even got onto the pro licence course. So Alan Matthews is brought in, and I think Alan was a very, very steady hand in the whole situation. First year didn't go well. They signed a lot of, I would have said, nearly dud players in the first year, a lot of misjudgment, awkward season, obviously COVID, and then last season, the season just finished, did very well. But to me, loyalty is very, very important in the game. Whether it's club football, international football, wherever you're involved, and I just think it's disgraceful what Stephen did 2 days after they won the cup. But I just think it's disgraceful behaviour and carry on, and it's not a good example to people in the game, to players. If you're trying to bring players to a club, and you're kind of setting a bit of a standard, but then as soon as you feel like it, you decide to go. It wasn't as if Stephen O'Donnell only played for one club, that he was one club man at Dundalk all his career. He played for several other clubs. Yes, he had a good time at Dundalk and won trophies and so on, but he made a decent commitment to Pats. They made a great commitment to them. Supporters got behind him. Certainly the chairman backed him totally, as he has done with all the managers who've been there in his time. And it was just a right kick in the teeth.
Well, Stewie, thoughts on that? Disgraceful?
Oh, I wouldn't go that far, no, I wouldn't. I think it's the wrong decision, but I mean, it's pure emotion, Joe. I think he's like, I've a lot of time for Stephen, I have to say, a lot of time for Brian as well. And Brian obviously is a big Pats fan. And I agree with Brian. I do think loyalty is very important in the game. Probably more important as a manager than it is as a player. And that's why I'm kind of focusing on this from a manager's point of view. players come and go. I mean, Roy Keane famously said, like, you're just a piece of meat, and you are, to be quite honest, you're expendable. But I just think as a manager, it's important for your career that you're seen to be, how would I put it? Stable, consistent, dependable, loyal. You can say loyal. I mean, loyalty in football, I'm not too sure, to be quite honest with you. But all of the above, what I just mentioned, I think it's important in a managerial career. And I just feel, I was quite surprised when I heard it. Look, I wasn't overly shocked when I heard it either. You can never be shocked in football anymore. You really can't, to be quite honest with you. And because it was Dundalk, Joe, I think he's very, very emotionally attached to Dundalk, because the best years of his career were there. But the best years of his career were there as a player. He's a manager now, and he's gone back to a club that's in a bit of rag order. They've got a lot of stuff to do. They got to get themselves back on the horse again. They've had an awful time of it in quite a short period of time. It's very difficult to turn a football club around after going through a difficult period the way they have, despite the fact that they were so successful for such a long period. But I looking at it from the outside, looking at it, I would, if I would have had the ability to advise Stevie, I would have told him to stick at it for another year, play in Europe, have another strong season under Pats, develop as a coach, as a manager, learn a few more things. And the European thing was a thing for me as well. I would have liked to see him play in Europe. He's gone back to Dundalk now. They're not in Europe. He's effectively rebuilding again. But he's rebuilding a club that's a little bit down in the dumps a bit. He's put a lot of pressure on himself. I have to say, pressure is a good thing. I always feel pressure is a good thing, whether you're a player or a manager. But he's put a lot of pressure on himself now, because if it doesn't work out at Dundalk, that's two clubs you can scratch off the list, and the list of clubs after that becomes quite short. But I'd have to say, I mean, the honours of Dundalk, it's a serious coup for them to be able to convince him to go up there. And I think they've played on the fact that he is emotionally attached to the football club, and it's probably still fresh in his own memory as a player what he achieved there. But those times are gone, Joe. And it's in my experience in the game, especially in Ireland, it's always a repetitive thing. Clubs do well for a period of time. Like in my time, it was Shelbourne, very successful for probably nearly a decade, and then went into the doldrums for a while. Shamrock Rovers were the same, Bohemians were probably the same as well, and Dundalk had their time and are now sort of rebuilding, trying to get back up there again. But I think they're going to find it very, very difficult. It's a very competitive league out there. And yeah, I just think I would have stayed. I would have stayed if I was him.
And Stewie, why do you think managers should show more loyalty than players?
For that, I don't know if he picked it up. When the loyalty thing came in there, I don't think they need to show loyalty to a football club, but I think it's important for them that they're seen to be sort of dependable, consistent, trustworthy. All these kind of things. It's a different breed. No, I haven't been a manager, Joe, or a coach, so I'm trying to really sort of think about who I would have signed for as a player. And I probably would have, I would have probably looked at somebody who was trying. I certainly would have looked at a manager who was trying to do something. But I wanted to win leagues, Joe. I wanted to play in Europe, and I wanted to win trophies. Couldn't give a damn about money, anything else. I tell you what, it was important to me, where I played, the pitch, the grounds, that kind of thing. And as a player, I wouldn't go to Dundalk. I couldn't play on that pitch, to be quite honest with you. But I'll give them their credit. They make a serious noise, and as a town, as a football club, they can really get behind their club. And I think that's what Stevie is thinking about here. Yeah. But it's going to be difficult to get them back to where they were, Joe. He's not going to do that in the first couple of years.
I take that. On Brian Kerr's point, now I don't know what the contractual situation was. I don't know what assurances...
he was up, I think. I think his 2 years were up.
Were they?
He'd only signed a 3-year contract.
Okay, well then even more so. But I don't know if there have been conversations in the background and assurances given or not. But either way, we're talking about football here, and you said nothing surprised you in football these days. People have been saying that for about 50 years. So, I mean, that's just the way football is, let's be honest. Where I think Stephen O'Donnell owes nobody anything is that he's got to forge his own career. He's got to do his best for himself and his family. If, yes, St. Pat's took a punt on him, and I'm sure he's appreciative of it, but I mean, they didn't take a punt on some fella walking down the street. He had a pretty good record as a player and was obviously a thinker about the game and showed enough in conversations to suggest he was worth taking a punt on. He did a very, very good job. If he had done a very, very bad job, eventually Pats would have fired him.
Sacked. Oh, I agree.
So
I agree, Joe.
Would that have been a disgrace? I don't understand why doing the right thing for you in football, which is absolutely cutthroat, and he would have been sacked if he'd done a bad job. I don't get why this is so egregious.
So again, I'll say I'm not totally surprised by it, but if I had been there to advise him, I would have said, give it another year, Stevie. Just have a go at Europe with Pats. Have a crack at the league with Pats. I'm sure they would have been in a position to go and do that. But
disgraceful though. Disgraceful is.
Oh yeah. I said I don't think it's disgraceful. I don't agree with that. Okay. So I don't think it's disgraceful. But I think I'm genuinely thinking. I'm kind of looking at this from Stephen's point of view. To be honest with you, I'm not,
because
I'm trying to put myself in a situation whereby if he'd have rang me, what would I have said to him? And I definitely would have said, give it another year.
No, I take the point. He probably should have stayed. You could argue actually, Pat's been in a really good place and having a bit of momentum and European football, all the reasons you've given there were a lot of reasons to stay. You could argue going to Dundalk, who are at a low ebb, shows, far from being a kind of mercenary guy who's just going to jump up and leave at the first sign of trouble. If Stevie O'Donnell came to any player now and said, come to Dundalk, I'm really trying to build something here, I mean, you would believe him. You wouldn't think Stevie O'Donnell's going to leave Dundalk in a year's time. It was a decision made with the heart as well,
Yeah, you would. But I know he signed Robbie Benson back straight away.
Yeah.
I think that's a good signing. Obviously, because Robbie knows immediately what way Stevie is going to manage, and he'll be able to relay that onto the players. I don't know whether, Robbie's probably I think. Whether he can sort of get that message across to a group of young players or not, it all depends. I just feel I think Stevie's put himself under a lot of pressure early in his career.
Okay.
I just think that job would have been there for him in 2 years' time.
Yeah, and he had credit in the bank at Pats going into next season.
Yeah, I'm just looking. I'm sort of in a position. I'm in a stage in my own sort of career now where I'm kind of looking at things a little bit differently. It might be the age. I'm 10 years older than Steve, so I'm looking at the league a little bit differently now. I think the importance now for the league is to really try and develop infrastructure. Stadiums need to be overhauled, and there's a lot of things happening in the background, but they're too slow. And I look at Dundalk, I look at Oriel Park.
Yeah,
it needs a huge overhaul. I look at the pitch; it's poor. As a player, I wouldn't want to play there. So they've had a poor season. And there's a lot there that needs to be fixed from my point of view. And he had done so well with Pats in a short period of time, and he had Europe to look forward to. He had a very, very good squad of players. Definitely needs to improve on that, absolutely. But I'm sure there would have been resources for him to go and do that, and he could have had a crack at the league title. And I don't see that being the case for him now. But he's put himself under a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
So I hope he can take. I know he can take it, but it's up to him now what he does with it.
Trips back to Richmond Park would be fun.
I'd say so. Yeah, absolutely. That's what makes the game. That's what makes the game.
That is football. That is football.
Football. Yeah.
The fixture list was released yesterday, so we'll be getting underway the second week of February. You'd be talking to people in the game now. Where are we when it comes to League of Ireland in 2021? Are we still very much at a point, and I presume the pandemic maybe has exacerbated this situation, whereby the vast majority of the players are out of contract because really the majority of them are only getting 1 year contracts and they're not being paid around about now, and there's a lot of cattle trading and a lot of phone calls and probably a lot of worry out there for players? Or is it a bit more stable than it had been in recent off seasons?
I think it's more stable, Joe. I think it's more stable now. A lot of clubs do pay in the off season now. They factor that into the contracts. You don't. I mean, when you think back to even my time, it wasn't that long ago. You know, there was always a club, if not a couple of clubs, that would have hit financial difficulty, weren't able to pay the players, and that was a continuous issue for a long period of time. That's not the case anymore now. There's stability there. Players can be pretty much assured that their contract will be paid, and they know they have those time periods in their own heads. Yes, you'll definitely be seeing an awful lot of a lot of phone calls, a lot of action going on in the background. It's the off season. I mean, look, let's not kid ourselves. It probably would have been happening 6-8 weeks ago as well. You know, that's just the reality of the game. It has to work like that. But there is more stability in it. We're not. I suppose we probably don't see. Only the big clubs are probably only able to kind of hand out 2-3 year contracts. I know Dundalk certainly one of them. Pats will be one of them as well. But there are players out there that are still sort of rolling year to year. So there's availability. There's that ability to be able to get 4 or 5 players in quite quickly. Stevie's done that. Actually, he's signed a couple of very good young players as brought them in. So you can see he's trying to. He is trying to build. And it's not going to be too long before we're back, Joe. It's going to come in very, very quickly. I think this is it's an earlier start than it's normal. You probably see players come back into pre-season now. Yeah. Late next week, middle of next week, probably. To be honest, give it a 7-week lead into the start.
And for you, how far are Rovers ahead of the pack?
If you take last season into consideration, the season just gone into consideration, I wouldn't say a huge amount, but I think, you know, Rovers, at a club like Rovers now, when you get into that mould of winning league titles, and especially win consecutive league titles, I always felt that as a player, that was the most difficult thing to do, to win a league back to back, because, you know, when you win one league, you're there to be shot at and you're the team to beat, and Rovers had to kind of deal with that this year. Weren't at their best this year, but I think they'll pick up again. Obviously, Jack Byrne coming into the squad is. I'm never too keen on players going back to clubs, but I think this is different. I think this could be different. Like, you know, I think Jack is going back to Rovers, in a similar situation to when he signed for Rovers before, and he kind of probably feels like he's something to prove again. You know, it's been such a difficult time for him.
Well, he's lost another 18 months of his career here.
Absolutely, Joe. Yeah, and I think he'd be chomping at the bit. I agree. I think it's a different scenario, and hopefully, he feels comfortable going back. I'm sure he will. He'll be no problem. And then look, he's got the Ireland thing to aim for as well. That's a huge card for him. I see Rovers being very strong. I think they have that ability to sign, Joe. Plus, you know, I actually only had this conversation with Richie Sadler actually the last time we were out in Tala. And you look around Tala, Joe, and they've nothing else to do. Yeah. The training ground is sorted. The ground is sorted. They've got
it's the opposite to what you're describing at Dundalk.
Absolutely, and to a lot of other clubs as well. You look at Bohemians are trying to get the ground sorted. Shelbourne are going through their own similar situations with the ground, but there is stability. But if you look at Shamrock Rovers, all the boxes are ticked. Stephen's just got to get out and improve his squad, and he's got the resources and the money to do it at. So they're the ones to beat, and you know, that's the model as well. That's the model that everyone is trying to get to. Derry, of course, have got a lot of money. Well, I wouldn't say a lot of money. I mean, Rory will tell you that there's money there, but the chairman's going to be very shrewd with his money. But they've, you know, when you look at Derry, the grounds in Great Nick, they've got good training facilities up there as well. It's a good catchment area. So again, I'd expect to see Derry very, very strong next year.
Okay, very good. Stuey Byrne, have a great Christmas. Thanks so much, Stuey.
You too, Joe, and a happy New Year to everybody.
Cheers.
Hope you enjoy it.
Stuey Byrne there with us chatting League of Ireland. And our football show coverage is with thanks to Sky. You can watch every live Premier League game this Christmas on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, proud partner and supporter of the Republic of Ireland women's national football team.
This is News Talk.
It's not just that Sarah can't rely on the rains to come this year. It's not just that the only water left could cost her life. It's not just that she has seen all her crops destroyed and she is struggling to feed her little boy. Like thousands of parents living in regions devastated by drought, Sarah is living in fear. And it's not just. This Christmas, your love can make all the difference. Visit Trócaire.org or call 1850 408 408. Trócaire, until love conquers fear.
This Christmas, make a list.
Premier League World Darts Championship.
Heineken Champions Cup. Check everything twice.
VAR have a really close look at this.
Find out who's naughty.
It is absolute mayhem.
And who's nice.
He has been incredible.
Enjoy live action from the Premier League, the